Hi everyone, it's Stephanie here and welcome back. In today's video, we are going to be creating a card with some distress inks and some acrylic paints. I really wanted to kind of experiment and go a little bit out of my normal comfort zone and do a card that looks completely painted. I have really wanted to try painting fireworks for quite some time, so I thought this would be a great time to do it since it was New Year's Eve last night and today is New Year's Day. So I thought I would create a fun New York skyline with some fireworks in the sky. So first off, before we get started, I do want to wish you all a very happy new year. I hope 2018 is your best year yet, and I look forward to spending it with you here on the MFT YouTube channel. So let's get started on today's card. So I knew I wanted to have the New York skyline as the main focal point on the card, but I didn't really trust myself to kind of paint it freehand. So the New York skyline die works really great for that, since I could cut it from a mask and put that onto my cardstock panel to kind of keep that silhouette in the background. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take distress inks and I'm going to add them to both the sky area, which is what I'm starting with now, and then when I remove the mask and put a different mask on, I'm also going to create the water area underneath. And what I'm going to be left with is the open area of the watercolor paper that is going to allow me to paint this, because I can just kind of paint over top of the masked area that we're creating. So what I'm doing is I'm adding my distress ink first. So this is a piece of watercolor paper that I am working on, just so that I have some nice blending with my distress inks and I'm able to add a little bit of water detail as well. And I really wanted the texture of the watercolor paper since it is a night scene. I just think it really adds to the realism of the card design. So I'm just working with a few colors. I started with the peacock feathers first, which you don't really see a whole lot once the card finishes, but I really like the little bit of light detail that it adds to the bottom. And then I added some faded jeans, some chipped sapphire, and some black soot to the rest of the card to kind of give that really nice night sky look. Now I have all the inking done here and I just very carefully peeled the mask off. And you can see I have a few areas where the mask lifted a tiny bit and I ended up with some inking there. But you don't need to worry about that at all because we're going to paint over top of this. So you're never going to see any of that ink that kind of went through and underneath the mask. Now I need to create the water portion. So like I mentioned before, I'm going to add a separate piece of masking tape here. And this is just going to give me a nice straight edge along the bottom of my skyline. And I'm able to add some distress ink to the bottom, which is going to be the water. Now I'm keeping the same colors. I'm using some peacock feathers first just to give a light look at the very top area of the water there. And then I went in with the other three colors and just added a bit more color until I had that fully covered with the ink. So now that I have both the sky and the water created, I do want to add a little bit of water to this just to give it a tiny bit of distressing. I just want to be able to see that little bit of texture in the background before I start to do any of the painting on this actual piece. So to do the water, I'm just putting some water onto an acrylic block and I'm using a paintbrush to kind of flick it off the side, and it just kind of gives a really nice smaller splatter, and I just kind of let it sit there for a few minutes and then use my paper towel to kind of dab that up. And you can see we end up with this really great kind of splotchy look in the background, and I just think it really helps to add to the overall look of the night sky. So now we're going to start doing some painting on the card, and the first thing we're going to do is create the fireworks in the sky. Now to create fireworks, I've never done this before, but I kind of played around with my different paintbrushes, and I realized that having a flat brush is the best way to do them. But the flat brush that I have, you can see there, I showed it a minute ago, is kind of too big for the area I'm working on. So I decided to just make what I have work, and I grabbed one of my smaller round brushes. This is actually a watercolor brush, but you can see here it's going to work just fine to create these big fireworks that I'm creating in the sky. So to create the fireworks, it's actually a lot easier than you'd think. You just simply take your paint, and I just kind of made sure to not have a lot of paint on the brush when I first started. And you kind of create a center point and then just kind of pull your paint color from that center point until you have a nice full firework created. As I work on the firework, I keep some of the lines really muted and then I have some really dark, and that just really gives the definition and dimension to the overall firework once it's finished. Now, I do let the layers dry a little bit and then I go back and add more, so you will see that as I go. But I do have this video sped up quite a bit because it's very long, but I wanted to leave the painting in to show you how I created the full entire sky and then did all of the painting on the silhouette of the skyline. So what I did is I finished doing all of the strokes of the firework, and then I added a bunch of little dot details just to kind of look like little bursts on the end of the firework. And now I'm going around and adding more fireworks to different areas of the sky. Now right now all I'm using is white paint. I don't have any color in here at all. It's simply just white paint, and I'm just doing a bunch of the little strokes there to create the firework. And as I go, you can kind of see that I do the main firework first, and then I do extend the lines a little bit to have a little bit of detail in the kind of area in between all the fireworks, just to make it look realistic and make it look like there's like trails of the fireworks kind of throughout the sky. Now this top one here, I got a little bit too heavy with my paint, and I have a little bit more paint in the center than I would have preferred, but I end up not minding it. Once I finish all of the painting and add the color, you don't really notice it all, and I think it ended up looking fine. So I'm just going to continue here until I have a really nice full sky. I'm adding a little bit of dot detail to various areas as well, just to kind of mimic snow or stars to go along with the fireworks. And then once I have that done, I need to let this whole top area dry before I come in with some more color. So this is where the skyline comes in. I want this to be completely black. And you can do this one of two ways. You can just take that skyline die and cut it out of black cardstock and create just a silhouette literally over top and just kind of glue it down over top of your scene, which would prevent you from having to do all of the masking and everything that I did at the beginning. But I didn't want to have a die cut piece on here. I really wanted to have a card that looked completely hand painted when it was finished. So that's why I went the extra step and did all the masking first. And now I'm going to go in and do all of the painting. Now this took a few minutes for sure because it's a small area and I really needed to take my time with the brush to make sure I kind of didn't go too far out of the lines. I mean, I wasn't 100% perfect, but I think that that's what adds to the overall look of the card because it really gives it that hand-painted feel. And even though we are working on watercolor paper, I had no problems with the paint going down on the watercolor paper. It just ended up giving me that really nice texture underneath of the watercolor paper. So everything painted really beautifully on here. Now, I could have used a little bit of a bigger brush, I think, to kind of get a little bit more even painting. I felt like it was a little bit more splotchy than I really wanted with the black area. But I felt like if I went in with too big of a brush, I was going to kind of get out of the lines and kind of make my buildings look a little bit more blobby and not quite defined like buildings as I did with the smaller brush. And it definitely took longer using the smaller brush, but I feel like it worked and I was able to get this really nice painted look. And we're going to add even more painted detail onto these buildings. So having the bottom area painted just really adds to this look. And I really ended up loving how it turned out. So once I had the silhouette all painted, I need that to dry now. So I can go back up to the sky area because that has completely dried. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add some color into my fireworks. Now you can get as creative with this as you want. Fireworks come in all kinds of beautiful colors. So you can use pinks and purples and reds, greens, any colors you want. But I decided to stay a little bit more muted and just use some turquoise color and some silver paint. I wanted to kind of keep the sky area just with that nice blue color. I didn't want to add too much color, but I did want to have some of that metallic silver mixed in as well, just because it kind of adds to that kind of festive New Year's look by having that silver paint in there. So I'm just doing the same thing as before. I'm taking my paint and I'm kind of mixing it with the white paint to mute it down a bit. I didn't want it to be super dark. And I'm just kind of mixing everything on my craft mat here as I go. And I'm just adding those strokes of paint right to the fireworks once again. So I am going to put some music on now while I finish painting this piece. Since it is a little bit long, I've kind of went over the details of what I did to create the scene. If you have any questions, please let me know. I think I covered everything. I do want to mention before I get to the music that I did add some window detail to the skyline, so you'll see that with some yellow paint. And then I'm also going to add some reflections in the water. So for that, I use black paint and the yellow paint, the same colors I use for the actual skyline. And I just watered them down with some water to make them kind of a little bit thinner and make them look kind of more like they were silhouettes in the water versus that stark image. So you will see me get to that as well. And then once I have all of the painting done, I'll meet you back here and we will put this card together. so I'm just finishing up the painting in the water, and you can see I'm adding a little bit of black line detail to the water, and that just kind of gives it the look of a ripple effect to make it actually look like water and movement. So now we have this whole entire scene completely painted, and I've let everything completely dry now, and we're going to do a little bit of die cutting in this. I would definitely wanted to add the year since it is a New Year's card, but I really didn't want to take away from this painted scene that we created. So I decided to take these little die cuts. These are the Bottlecap numbers, and I'm going to die cut them right through that big, large firework right in this top area of the card. So I used my grid mat to line everything up, and then I just used some repositionable tape, and I added these right to the top area of the panel. And then I ran this through my die cut machine. Now you do want to be careful when you're using any kind of tape that you kind of remove it carefully since it will lift some of that paint. And I actually did end up with some of that white in the firework lifting off, so I did add a little bit more paint on top of that. Now to finish the card, I'm just adding the panel to a top folding white card base, which is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches. And I'm taking all of the numbers here that I die cut and I'm putting them back into the openings. So it's just some die cut inlay, everything is still one layer. And it kind of puts the year kind of in the background. It doesn't make it the focal of the card, but it does include it on there so it is a true New Year's card. So that completes our card today, and we have this beautiful painted scene that we've pretty much created all entirely with paint. It is definitely, like I said, a little bit different for me. It's, more artistic than I normally do, but I really had so much fun creating this, and I hope you will give it a try. Fireworks are a lot of fun to paint, and it was really fun to kind of take this to the next level and do complete painting on the project versus doing any die cutting or stamping. So thanks so much for watching. Happy New Year to all of you, and I will see you in another video soon.